Hey guys, today we have another video released from Dungeons & Dragons, the next video for the Unearthed Arcana for the expert classes for the One D&D, the playtest material. So we're going to take a look at the video and have our reactions. And here we go.
Hello everyone, we have a brand new Unearthed Arcana. We have classes, subclasses, we have feats, conditions, we have new rules having to do with skill checks and attack rolls, as well as how a critical hit functions. So let's just
There's a lot of questions about how critical hits would function and if they would change it.
All of that.
This Unearthed Arcana is filled with things I can't wait for people to playtest. We're playing testing them internally here at
We can't
Wizards,
wait to playtest them.
And leading the pack in this playtest for the classes are the Ranger, the Bard, and the Rogue. People are going to see in the next...
The Ranger was one of them that everybody felt should be a lot stronger in the last edition, in 5th edition. Partially because they made, in all the fiction, all the stories, anytime there was a Ranger, they were super powerful. But then mechanically within 5th edition, they just didn't live up to the hype. So I know that was a class that a lot of people were hoping would get a lot of love in this edition. I've always been a fan of the Rogue, so I'm looking forward to that one as well. Let's see how they're making changes to those.
Few months, all of the classes from the 2014 Player's Handbook are going to appear in Unearthed Arcana so that people can read them, give feedback, play test them. Following after that, you're going to see a series of Unearthed Arcanas that also unveil new versions of subclasses, as well as some brand new subclasses for those classes.
I would hope so.
The total number of subclasses when all is said and done, 48. So we have a lot of fun things ahead of us to try out.
So 48 subclasses for all the different classes. I mean, that seems like a lot, but what is there, 8 or 10 classes, something like that, maybe just 8, maybe 10, I don't know. But that's just 4 or 5 subclasses per, and we know that's going to change anyway as they come out with new supplements and things. I mean, you know, this initial release, sure, that's a lot, but touting that there's that many, you know, there's eventually going to be, you know, dozens of subclasses per class as it goes forward. But it is exciting that there will be a lot more variety, a lot more options with which to go. And I apologize for pausing on that particular face.
But today, we're focused on our friends, the Bard, the Ranger, and the Rogue, along with, as you mentioned, a bunch of feats, because each of these classes, like all of the classes in the game, has the option at certain levels of taking feats, including the new ability score improvement feat, which many fans rightly predicted is what was going to be coming. And sure enough, when you reach any of the levels that in the past where you would have gotten the ability score improvement feature, now you have the option of taking the ability score improvement feat. Does exactly the same thing as the ability score improvement feature in the 2014.
So they didn't really change anything. As you level up at whatever levels, 4, 8, if they do it at the same levels, it didn't really change the way that works. It's just instead of saying you can either get a feat or you can get these ability score improvements, they just made a feat that is ability score improvements. So that, you know, it's semantics.
Player's Handbook, or you can take another feat of your choice. If your group is deciding to go beyond the ability score improvement feat and the first level feat that you're getting from your background in the previous Unearthed Arcana. This UA also includes the Arcane, Divine, and Primal spell lists all the way up to level 9, and it includes
so we get all the spells.
Rules glossary that is filled with even more treasures than the previous one. And here I want to pause a little bit and talk about how do you use these unearthed arcanas together? Because now that we have 2 out as a part of the One D&D playtest, we would love for people to play using material from multiple One D&D unearthed arcanas. The one main thing to keep in mind as people playtest is that the rules glossary of each UA supersedes the rules glossaries of any previous One D&D UAs. So we'd love for you to take the character.
Okay, so in one of my games, I have somebody playtesting the orc. So he made a character based off of the first playtest document. However, there was no classes involved, so I believe he went fighter. Yeah, he went fighter. So sadly, fighter's not one of the classes in this one, or he could go ahead and take that. But it was interesting trying to make a character using classes from 5th edition, but races and backgrounds from One D&D. So it's nice that now we're going to get the classes and we can kind of do that. I also noticed that with Rogue and with Bard, you're going to have some spell casting, and so they are going to have the list, but none of the changes to spells that I'm assuming will be coming are yet in this. So it's kind of, some aspects of playtesting are going to be more difficult. Playtesting a bard and seeing how a bard plays, sure, you've got all the class abilities and spells, but we don't know what those spells are actually going to look like unless they're giving us. He said the spell list. I was assuming that was just a list of which spells at which level. We'll wait and see, but the rogue and what was the other one that was in this one? Well, they're not spellcaster classes, so we'll see how that all shakes out too. Ranger, they're kind of a partial caster.
Origin options from the previous UA, combine them with the classes and feats in this UA, but use only the rules glossary from the new Unearthed Arcana. Because over the course of the next year and a half, we're going to try out different versions of core rules and then see what people think of those different versions.
And we kind of expected that too. For example, with the criticals, the current playtest rules, only players can crit and only with weapon attacks. So if you're a spellcaster, you get no crits. If you're the bad guys, you get no crits. And there was a lot of people that suspected that was that was something that was going to change, and that was something that they were toying with, mostly just to get our reactions and see what we thought as players.
A great example of this is how we're handling critical hits.
Yes.
So you and I, in our video last time, talked about the fact that the previous Unearthed Arcana had a rule that we knew was...
This is totally my first time watching this video. I did not pre-watch this video so that I could do stuff like that. That's just because I'm that good.
It's very experimental.
Right.
And had a good chance of not being what the community was going to cheer for, but we were interested in seeing what do people think, because there were some angles to that rule that we were fascinated in seeing how can this serve the game. We've already seen some of the responses, and you're going to see this time that for the current version of the playtest, we are using the critical hit rule as it exists in the 2014 Player's Handbook. So again, make sure if you're playtesting and everyone else is playtesting, read the new rules glossary, where you'll also see that we are experimenting with different rules this time around for the D20 test. This time we don't have the universal rule of a 20 always succeeding and a 1 always failing. Instead, we are playing around with some other approaches. Although there, you're also going to find a familiar friend in that we're largely using the 2014 version of the rule, with the catch that this time we're testing rolling a 1 on a d20, giving you inspiration.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because
that is interesting.
we basically have 3 different
I am a fan of having a mechanic that gives you inspiration. Inspiration is something as a dungeon master I often forget to grant to my players, because I'm busy dealing with a dozen monsters and environmental effects and what have you, and so I'm not thinking about giving them inspiration. That's something that their character has and can use. So I'm not thinking when I'm running the adventure about what their character has and can use. So by having these mechanics, it hard codes in a way to give inspiration to the players, but also so that the players can know the rule and give themselves the inspiration. And I think that will encourage them to use it more frequently. And I think that that's a good thing, because most of my characters when I play, and most of the players when I run the adventures, they inspiration just sits on their sheet for 3 or 4 levels until something major happens, and we're like, does anybody have inspiration? Can we re-roll that? And it's a mechanic that just doesn't seem to get used very often.
modes we are looking at for getting inspiration in play. Last time we asked everyone to try out getting it when you roll a 20. This time we're asking you to try it out when you roll a 1. We also, in the previous Unearthed Arcana, had another mode in the human of getting inspiration when you finish a long rest. We've actually considered having that as a potential rule for everybody, but right now we want to try out the roll a 1 rule for everybody, and then humans have the special feature of getting it at the end of a long rest.
I'd like everybody get it at the end of a long rest. Humans get it at the end of a short rest, maybe, to give them a little boost, something else. I think that would be a good way to make inspiration more usable for people.
Now, speaking of humans and the other content in the previous Unearthed Arcana, the survey for that UA is still open, and the response has been tremendous. As of today, over 40,000 people have completed the survey.
I'm sure they've read it.
We'll see how many more people
In depth.
have completed it by the time the survey closes next week. We are then going to go
They must have
into,
pre-recorded this. I thought the
our
survey ended on the
investigation. What
26th.
has
That was
everyone
4 days
said
ago,
about
as of
the
my
different
recording.
options that were in that
This
UA.
video just came out 2 days
We
ago.
will look at all of the satisfaction scores. And then in a future video, you and I will get together and we'll talk about what did people say. And then at a future point in this journey we're on together, we'll present a new version of that Unearthed Arcana incorporating people's feedback. That's going to be the cycle that we're all in together during this long playtest. Just like we did in D&D Next, we're going to present something, we're going to get the feedback back, we'll analyze it, we'll do a new version incorporating feedback, and then we'll get feedback on that new version until, in a few years' time, the game coalesces into the new core books.
We're also going to have several videos all about this Unearthed Arcana that will go a little bit more in depth. It is important to remember, like, we have had a record-breaking amount of people download the playtest. We are very excited, and if you're watching this video, please remember, like, we appreciate all the comments on YouTube and other social networks, but what will really help us in the end is if you download the playtest and then take the survey that comes out and leave your feedback. That is how you help us sculpt the future of D&D together.
Yeah, filling out that survey is the best way to have an impact on where this is heading. Now, in addition to responding to what we see there, we're also going to continue to do experiments. So I mentioned we are dealing with the D20 test and getting inspiration differently this time. That's just simply our design process proceeding. That's not even in response to the feedback yet because the survey is still open. So people are going to get to see not only new versions of things that we've heard from the community that they would like to see, you're also going to see new versions of things based on our own internal playtesting and also just different versions of mechanics we want to try out. This is a playtest, and part of that is testing out sometimes multiple versions of things to see which one on its own resonates most for all of us as DMs and players of this game, and then even further, which options sync up well with the other pieces of the game, because D&D is a game with hundreds, if not thousands of moving parts, and we want to make sure that if anything shifts, things...
This is a long stretch of a video where they're just talking about how a playtest works. I think we all understand how a playtest works. I don't think we need a 6-minute, explanation of how they work. They could really move this along a little bit quicker. Sorry.
Are really running together in a way that's going to make people feel in the end, this game is exactly what I want it to be. So this time around, what we're asking people to look at are these classes, which also are framed in a way that is new for the current version of the game.
Let's go ahead and dig into the classes then. So we've got 3 of the classes here, and then we've got subclasses attached. So tell me about what's changed.
So one of the first things is that framing that is going to be new for people. And that is that these 3 classes are presented as experts. So people are going to see in this Unearthed Arcana that the 12 classes of the Player's Handbook,
12.
as well as the Artificer,
So 4 subclasses
while
apiece.
not in the Player's Handbook, gets mentioned in this UA. Each of these classes is now a part of a group in this playtest. The Ranger, the Rogue, and the Bard are part of what's currently called the Expert group. So hence the name of this Unearthed Arcana, the Expert.
So this feels a little bit like in an MMO or something where you've got your tank, you've got your healer, you've got your it feels like it's really bundling people into certain roles. That's the word I was looking for. Roles within the game. I mean, okay, I hate to force people into certain roles based on classes, because any class can function in any role if built properly. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Expert classes. In future Unearthed Arcanas, you're going to see the other class groups featured, but we wanted to start with the experts.
DPS.
Now, this new concept of class group, new for the current version of the game, is something that has appeared in D&D's history at various times, going all the way back to even the 2nd edition Player's Handbook grouped classes in a similar way. The big question is here, what do these groups mean? The main thing that they do for us is provide a way to deliver groups of classes certain elements of the game collectively. So you're going to see in this very Unearthed Arcana, some of the feats, for instance, have certain class groups as prerequisites. You'll see a feat where it says you maybe need to be a member of the Expert or the Warrior group to take this feat.
I don't like that. Now, this is my first time hearing it. I'd like to see it, how it plays out, take a look at the rules. But if I want to be a warrior, what if I want to, so let's assume healer is another one of these classes, or we'll stick with warrior because we know that warrior and expert are 2 of the classes. Let's suppose they go with a feat that is only available to the warrior class, but I'm an expert and I want to be able to use it as a ranger, as an expert. I want to be able to do something that the fighter can. Why would I not be able to take that feat? Why can I not learn that skill? I mean, that seemed like it was kind of the point of what was supposed to be happening with One D&D was to open it up to more stuff. That's why they took the attribute bonuses out of races and put them in backgrounds, is to stop limiting choice based on the mechanics and open it up. And now they're taking those choices and limiting them again based on the mechanics. So again, we'll see how it plays out, but this seems like a bad design to me. And maybe it's another one of those things where it's like, we're just going to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks and see how people react to it. Well, now you've got my reaction.
What that does is it allows us to serve up options to multiple classes simultaneously, and also
restrict it
classes like the
from
Artificer
certain classes
that might not be in the same book as the 12 classes that are in the player's handbook. Because since we indicate here in this UA that the Artificer counts as an expert, that means anything that members of that group qualify for, the Artificer qualifies for. And if we were ever to make a new class and put it into one of these groups, then suddenly it is able to tap into the shared tech of that group. You're going to see
or
this,
if you just don't have those, then
the next
everybody
year or
can.
So, where you'll see magic items that, rather than having a particular class or a particular feature as a prereq, we'll have one of these groups or multiple groups as a prerequisite. You're also going to see that in many cases, while the classes have retained their distinctiveness and their delightful asymmetry, where they work in the ways that are most appropriate for those individual classes, you're going to see more common pieces. So one example of that in this current Unearthed Arcana is all 3 of the expert classes have the expertise feature. The expertise feature is the signature feature of experts. And so that means even the Ranger now has it. The Bard and the Rogue already had it in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Well, now the Ranger gets it too, because one of the aspects of the Ranger's class fantasy is being the best in a group, particularly at things like survival, stealth, so that the Ranger can be fantastic at what is iconic for them. Right. And expertise is one of the ways that we do that. Another thing that the experts all have in common is that they are polymaths. They like to have pieces within their classes that are reminiscent of things in other groups. So it is by design that all 3 of the experts have components within them that are reminiscent of things that you might see in the warrior group, the mage group, the priest group, but here mixed together in a way that...
So in 5th edition, the Bard kind of had that anyway, with like magical secrets. I can grab spells from other places and things like that. So they just kind of took the role of the Bard. The Bard was kind of the jack of all trades and can do this, could do that, could do whatever, however you chose to build it. They seem to have just rolled that all into the experts, the expert class.
That is unique to each of the expert classes. Now we can dive in to each of the classes individually and their subclasses, but that overview I think is exciting because it shows that we're not only thinking now of the classes as individuals and also then as a whole family, but then also in these subgroups, and we can leverage these groups in a variety of ways that I think are going to be really fun, not only in terms of the options that we'll be able to give people, but even when it comes to party building. Something we note in this current article is that when you're building a party now, if you want to create sort of a classic balanced D&D party, one way you can do that is make sure you have a member in your group from each of the class groups. Also, something that people are going to see.
I feel like we could have figured that one out on our own.
The Ranger and the Bard in this Unearthed Arcana is a list of suggested prepared spells. One thing that we have seen over the last 8 years very clearly is that sometimes playing a spellcaster can be a little daunting.
Right.
And so what we've done to make it a bit easier to ease into playing a spellcasting class that you've never played before is we provide from level 1 all the way up to level 20 a set of suggested prepared spells for the class. So again, you're going to see that here on the Bard. You're going to see it.
In one of the groups that I run, we have it's 3 couples, and so we've got the 3 guys in the group have been playing for decades, whereas the women in the group have a much more limited experience because they weren't playing games like this until we indoctrinated them into the nerddom that is Dungeons and Dragons. And so they all tend to play much more straightforward classes like a fighter or something like that, whereas then it ends up being us guys that will then play the caster classes. And part of that is, like he's saying, it's more daunting because there's so many more options. If you play a fighter, once you've selected what weapon you're using, you're attacking. It's easy. You know what you're doing on each turn, and maybe you've got some bonus actions or whatever that you want to do. But it's pretty straightforward. Whereas spell casting, every round you've got a multitude of options to select from, and that was daunting to some of the wives in the group. And I think that it's good to have these suggestions to kind of give you an idea of what options are out there and to what somebody at least thinks is the best option in a general sense. I mean, situationally it could be different, but in general they're going to tell you what they think are the best options. So I think that's a nice change that they've added.
In the Ranger, and in future Unearthed Arcanas, when we get to other spellcasting classes, you're going to see it in them as well, where we take some of the most iconic spell options and put them on a list so that, again, whether you're a new player or a veteran who may be just like, I don't feel like making a choice, please, D&D book, tell me, you can go to that class, look at the suggested.
I don't know a single veteran role player, veteran D&D player that's like, oh, well, I have new choices to pick. I don't want to pick a choice. You build it for me. I don't know a single person that's a veteran D&D player that would think that. But like I said, I like the feature, so we'll give it a pass.
List of prepared spells, and just start with that. You still have, of course, the option every time you finish a long rest to change that list, but it gives you a nice starting point so that you maybe don't have to do quite as much homework when you decide to dive into a spellcasting class that's new for you.
So ritual spellcasting has changed, or rather people have more access to it now?
Yes, so one of the many goodies in the rules glossary is
That seemed like a weird transition. Did I miss something? I mean, he sounded like he was asking a question in reference to something that was said, but I feel like they're just starting the next point. That was just a little weird.
Simple but important to note that we are playtesting currently that basically if you can cast a spell and it has the ritual tag, you have the option of casting it as a ritual. In the past, a character had to have a feature that specifically unlocked rituals for them, and we've decided to experiment instead with just the ability of, again, if you can cast the spell and it has the ritual tag, you have the option of casting it as a ritual.
That's a nice change.
And just have that turned on
I like
for
that.
spellcasters of all sorts.
And all the classes eventually get, we didn't touch upon this, also can get access to epic feats or epic boons.
That is right. Now, every class, what was previously their 20th level feature,
Right.
they now get at 18th level. And instead, now at 20th level, those epic boons that are in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, you now get one when you hit 20th level. Now, we have a suggested one for each class, but when you hit 20th level, you now get to pick. And those epic boons have been reimagined as feats, and many of them are also available in this Unearthed Arcana.
That's awesome.
And those links over there don't work because that's their links, not my links. So some interesting stuff there. It'll be fun to check out the actual playtest material. This was just my initial reaction to their video. We will continue breaking down these videos, so subscribe down below so you'll be notified when I have another reaction video. We're also going to build or put together a lot of videos about the different stuff in the playtest material as well. So if you'd like to check that out, subscribe. And we're also over on Twitch, and I'll have a link down in the description. You can check us out on Twitch. We stream fairly regularly, and we're going to break down a lot of the information over there too. So until then, keep on hacking the dungeon.